Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's special guest is a beloved multiple Emmy and Golden Globe Award-winning actress who's been dazzling audiences since she became the very last contract player at Universal Studios in 1972. After distinguishing herself in a number of memorable roles on TV, including Kathleen Faverty in Marcus Welby, Maggie Philbin in Switch, Sidney Enderman in Centennial, Penny Alston in Turnabout, and Jane Jeffries in Housecalls, she landed the iconic role of Christine Cagney in the groundbreaking TV series Cagney and Lacey, which was the first TV drama with two female lead characters, for which she won 2 Emmy Awards and a Golden Globe for Best Leading Actress in a Drama Series. She went on to win another Golden Globe Award and 2 more Emmy nominations for her starring role in The Trials of Rosie O'Neill. And then, for 5 glorious seasons, she became immortalized for exemplifying the warmth and loving acceptance of the ideal mom in another groundbreaking TV show, Queer as Folk, which became the #1 show on the Showtime cable network and forever changed the landscape of how the LGBTQ community was portrayed on TV. After playing Lynn Warner on The State Within and the evil Colleen Rose on Nip Tuck, which earned her a 9th Emmy nomination, she gave us yet another Emmy-nominated iconic performance as the chain-smoking hypochondriac mother from hell, Madeline Weston, in Burn Notice, which ran for 7 seasons. She continues to deliver outstanding performances on TV in The Gifted, Casualty, and in the upcoming TV movie Constance, and in a feature film being released next year, Fast Charlie, co-starring Pierce Brosnan and the late James Caan. In addition to having a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, she's been nominated for 23 prestigious acting awards, including 10 Emmy Award and 7 Golden Globe Award nominations. And now her best-selling memoir entitled Apparently There Were Complaints, which was released last year, is now coming out in paperback on November 29th. This is a deeply personal, brutally honest, and highly relatable book that I simply could not put down. I'm beyond thrilled to welcome the one and only Sharon Gless to our show. Sharon, thank you so much for being here.
Harvey, my God, I've never heard a resume like that. I'm exhausted. I didn't realize they did all that. Thank you.
It's my pleasure and honor. I have to start by thanking our mutual dear friend, Robert Wagner, who facilitated this interview. He was your co-star in Switch, and he guest starred in 3 episodes of The Trials of Rosie O'Neill. You've remained very close friends over the years, haven't you?
Yes, we have. It was odd because on Switch, I was like his kid sister. You know, I played his young assistant who was always screwing up. And then when he came to play with me on Rosie O'Neill many years later, he became my lover. And it was, what a big switch. I remember being so shy the first time we had our kiss. I went to the set I had an idea of how I wanted to do this, right? And I said, where's RJ? And they said, oh, it was like 5:30 in the evening when we were starting. He said, he's in his trailer. He's shaving because he's going to be kissing you and he didn't want to hurt your skin. Can you imagine? I mean, okay.
What a guy. What a guy.
That's Robert Wagner. He's made love to the great beauties and then me on screen. And he knew that courtesy to shave before, rubbing his face on you.
I'm not surprised. He's the greatest gentleman I've ever met. If you're watching, RJ, thank you so much. We both send you our love. The word that kept coming into my head as I was reading your book is resilience. You grew up in a household where public displays of affection were discouraged. Those are your words. Your parents separated when you were 14, and that launched you into a severe depression. You had a grandmother who was incredibly rigid and insensitive and sometimes downright cruel. You wrote that as a young girl, you found a way to be dead inside so you didn't have to feel anything. How in the world did you develop any sense of self-esteem at all?
Well, I think what I developed was a sense of humor. And that's sort of what where the self-esteem came from. As long as I could keep laughing, I knew I would be fine. My grandmother, she was tough and very strict. And she held the purse strings also. So I had to dance, I tried all my life until she died when I was in my 20s. And around my 60s, I was seeing a medium. And I asked this medium, I said, I want to ask you, I said, is my grandmother proud of me? I said, I've become a respected actress. I'm made good money. I'm holding my own. I've never had to ask anybody for anything. Is she proud of me now? And the medium said, I'll be right back. She just closes her eyes and she opens them. She said to tell you, she's proud of you still.
Well, there you have it. You see?
Isn't that a great line? And it's so my grandmother.
She was there all along. And your grandfather, Neil McCarthy, who was the most successful entertainment lawyer in Hollywood, told you as a child to stay out of show business because it's a filthy business. When you were 26, you told him you wanted to be an actress, and he turned out to be supportive, and he even helped you out financially. What did you make of his change in attitude?
I don't know. I think it was a terrible time in my life. I was going to be married at his home. He was going to walk me down the stairs. My engagement to be married ended. My job that I had as a secretary in the industry ended. I was broke. Nothing was going on right for me. And so my grandfather called me and he said, and he had just gotten a new wife, Mary, and younger than my mother, you get it. But Mary was very good to me. And my grandfather called me and he said, I want you to bring my station wagon to the desert. So I went to his house in Beverly Hills and I got a station wagon. I drove it to Scottsdale, to his ranch, and rear-ended somebody just before I landed at his house. I'm telling you, Harvey, things couldn't have gotten worse. And he came outside the door and saw what I'd done to his car with the smoke coming out. And he just burst out laughing. I think he realizes it couldn't get any worse. So that night, I think he asked Mary to talk to me and say, what do we do with her? Anyway, Mary and I, my new grandmother, split a bottle of champagne, a large one, that evening. And halfway through, she said, so Sharon, you're 26 years old and you've got nothing to show for your life. What do you want to do? I've never had anybody speak to me that way. I mean, I've never had anybody quite challenge me like that, or be quite as rude. And I said, I don't know. And she said, just say it, Sharon. Anything. It doesn't matter. Anything that comes into your mind. It doesn't matter if you don't know how you'll ever do it. It doesn't matter if it will ever happen. Just say it. And out of my mouth, because I'd never said this before, Harvey, I said, I want to be an actress. She said, so why don't you do it? And I said, well, I had divulged this many, many years ago, Mary, and Grandpa said, you stay out of it. It's a filthy business. And he was a big motion picture lawyer. And she said, I was under contract to MGM when I was your age, and I wasn't very good. I only lasted a year, but don't let that dream go. And I said, Mary, please don't say anything to Grandpa. She said, no, of course I won't. Well, the next morning, I'm called into his room, and there he is still and sitting up in bed. And he said, that's ridiculous. I said, I knew you'd feel that way, Grandpa. He said, I mean, it's ridiculous. You think I would try and stop you. He said, so what are you going to do about it? I said, well, I'm going to take acting lessons. He said, how much are those? I said, they're $300. It was $3 or $5, I can't remember. He said, so you've got $300. Now what? That was tremendous amount of money to me, Harvey.
Oh, yeah.
I had nothing. It may have been $500, but it was a tremendous amount of money. And he said, so do you want to go home? I said, no, Grandpa, I came to visit you and Mary for 2 weeks. He said, I'm asking you again, you want to go home? And Harvey, my grandfather, bred and raised thoroughbreds. And he knew when a filly was about to run.
Yep.
He knew it. And he said, go get a ticket from Mary. You're going home tonight. And the rest was history.
Wow.
Within a year, I was under contract to Universal.
And one of the most pivotal people in your career was Monique James, head of talent at Universal, who became one of the best known and most successful talent agents in Hollywood. When you were 27, Sharon, she offered you a 7-year contract. This is how she described you. Nothing about you fits. Your voice doesn't match your face. Your stride belies your lack of confidence. You're as soft as a puppy, but you talk like a teamster. Absolutely nothing fits. But when you put it all together, it works and something magical happens. Sharon, what did you think when she said that?
I was flattered. She said, if I tell you, you'll become aware of it. And that's why she wouldn't. They said, all right, I'll tell you. And by the time she was through, I still didn't know what she was talking about. But the things that those different qualities weren't offensive to me, so I thought, hey, if whatever it is, if it works, I'm so grateful to be here. My last chapter of the book, I talk about the gratitude I had for her and that studio, because I learned so much those 10 years I was there, Harvey. I was the last contract player in the history of Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I was the last one to leave the lot. And it was a glorious, very romantic time.
Well, you're often compared to Carol Lombard. What was it like to actually get to play her in the Scarlett O'Hara War?
I was so excited. I read for it 4 times, but I knew who she was, and I rented her films and I studied her very carefully. And she was very funny. Some of the scenes in the show were not necessarily funny, but I made them hers. She had a lightness to her. She was the highest paid actress in Hollywood in her day, and she negotiated her own contracts. It was a dream to be able to play her.
And then for a while, Sharon, you became known as the Hollywood Fix-It Girl. You replaced Angie Dickinson in Revenge of the Stepford Wives. You stepped in at the last minute to replace the lead actress in Hard Hat and Legs. You replaced Lynn Redgrave in Housecalls, and you replaced Meg Foster on Cagney and Lacey. Did you like being the one they could turn to when a show was in trouble?
Replacing Lynn Redgrave was a little daunting, but it was fine with Lynn. I mean, Lynn and I became good friends. I didn't want to keep being the troubleshooter of Hollywood. I wanted something of my own. So when Cagney and Lacey, I was the 3rd person to play Cagney. And immodestly speaking, I was the first invited to play her, but as Barney says, actors are not always the best judges of material. So I didn't want to do it. And finally, the 3rd time I was invited, I got smart enough and I took the role.
Well, now, of course, Cagney and Lacey cracked the glass ceiling in the early 80s. It was groundbreaking in so many ways. Besides being the first drama with 2 female lead characters, you introduced the public to a professional, financially independent, single woman with a successful career as a police detective with a female work partner. Christine Cagney dated men on her own terms. She wasn't looking for a husband. But Chris and Mary Beth were not activists. They were not political. And you never heard them talking about feminism, right?
No. It was insinuated that we were the only women in the precinct. So we had to go to what we called the Jane to have any private conversations away from the men. But it was the first feminist television series ever put on television. It was the first time 2 women had ever played the lead in a drama. And by the time the show was over, we were thrown off the air 3 times. some of our episodes, some of the affiliate stations would not air them. It was quite a scandal and a cause celeb when Cagney and Lacey first came on, but it formed the rest of my career and changed my life. And I don't think I'd be here talking to you, Harvey, if I hadn't been given that role. It changed the history of television for women.
It absolutely did. And the show dealt with many important issues like breast cancer, abortion, child sexual abuse, immigration, birth control, date rape, teenage sex, domestic violence, and one issue that hit very close to home, alcoholism. Given what you were going through in your own life, how did you feel about the Chris Cagney character being an alcoholic?
Well, I didn't know what was going on in my own life. I didn't know I was an alcoholic. I didn't believe I was one. It never occurred to me. An interviewer was talking to me and she said, "You know that Christine Cagney has all the attributes of an adult child of an alcoholic?" I said, "No, I didn't know that." So I said, I went to Barney. He said, "Did you know that Christine Cagney has all the attributes of an adult child of an alcoholic?" He said, "Honey, you're the one playing it." And I said, "Oh." He said, "Do you want to go there? Do you want Chris Cagney to be a victim?" Because I had always had a thing about I never wanted Cagney to be a victim. And he said, "Do you want to play it? Do you want to deal with that subject?" I said, "Absolutely. Yeah, it is who she is. She always had a drink in her hand, but I always thought it was for laughs, you know." So then we decided to tell the truth about her, and we did a two-parter that was really quite stunning. I think it was one of the most stunning shows I've ever seen on television. I asked Barney when he went into my loft, Cagney's loft, I said, "Would you please shoot in sequence?" Always on film, Harvey, you never shoot in sequence, you just shoot wherever you are.
Right.
And he said, "I will. It takes longer, it takes more money, but because I could keep track of how drunk I was and how drunk I was about to get, he shot it all in sequence." And
it was really brilliant.
Thank you. I didn't write it. I just got to play it.
Wow, it was unforgettable. Can I tell you my favorite episode of Cagney and Lacey?
What?
It was called The Gimp, which dealt with crimes targeting disabled people in wheelchairs. Your relationship with James Stacey in that episode was refreshingly realistic, very poignant and moving. I just have to tell you, I loved it.
He was so sexy. Here was an actor who had lost his arm and his leg in real life and came and did this part with it. I got my first Emmy for that episode. And Christine Cagney falls in love with him. She has sex with him, which Christine, you'd never seen her having sex with anybody yet. And he was, what an actor. He's gone now, but working against those odds, he came across like the sexiest man I've ever seen in that show. And Cagney became besotted by him.
And we were besotted by you.
Well.
Okay, Sharon, I want to talk about Queer as Folk, which became a pop culture phenomenon. You played the unforgettable Debbie Novotny with great honesty, guts, and a fierce love and loyalty to her gay son and to the gay community. You were the mother that we all wanted. And I want to tell you that on behalf of all the gay people out there, like myself, whose parents were not supportive when we came out. I want to thank you for such a beautiful and a healing performance.
Oh, well, Harvey, thank you. Thank you for saying that. It's so odd that you would thank me because I was so grateful to get that part. I went after it. I called Showtime and said, I want that part. And they gave it to me and flew me out to New York. I was in Chicago doing a play, and they flew me out to, Los Angeles to meet the producers, Ron and Dan, and they signed me that day. And it was 5 years of the most daring television I've certainly done, with the bravest actors the scenes from that show had never been done ever on television. And what a treat. It again changed my life and again changed my career.
I just hope you get how much you impacted those of us who felt rejected, not accepted, unloved. There was such a warmth in your portrayal of Debbie Novotny. I can remember, for example, your most memorable line in Queer as Folk for me was when you said, I had to tell my son Michael he was gay so he didn't have to tell me first. Sharon, do you have any idea how moving and profound that was for a mother of a gay child to have that much sensitivity and insight?
Harvey, I'm sitting with my mouth open because of all the lines I ever said on that show, that apparently is the favorite.
Oh, yes.
I don't know when I was saying it. I remember exactly where I was, exactly what time of evening it was. I remember the whole thing. But I remember it was a tender line. But I had no idea the reaction that line would have. And here you are telling me that line.
Well, it's because we all struggled with having to tell our parents and how we were going to tell them. And for a mother to know her child that well, that she relieved him of the burden and told him herself, it was absolutely, like I said, cathartic, redemptive, healing. You will always be in my heart because of what you said in that episode of Queer as Folk.
Well, Ron Cowan and Dan Lippman wrote it. I just got to say it. Thank you so much. That show also changed my life. I'm really one of those people. I know it's such a good say. Some of my best friends are gay, and that's just been my life. But I did not know the heartbreak and the sadness of the gay world at that time until I did that show. And now I show up for everything.
I have my own theory about why the role of Debbie Novotny fit you so well and resonated with you so much. I think it's because you've always felt like an outsider, like you were on the outside looking in. You understand that feeling of being isolated and not really fitting in.
That's so true. You did read my book. Yes, it's always been that way for me. Almost in everything I've done, I felt like I was the outsider. I didn't relate that when I was doing Queer as Folk. I felt such a love for the boys and the characters in that show that I didn't experience them as outsiders. I experienced them as insiders because they were in my arms, in my heart, in my scenes. But that's so funny. You call me an outsider because I always have been.
Well, you're my kind of outsider, Sharon Gless. I can't resist mentioning your performance as Colleen Rose, the psycho villain on Nip Tuck. You got your 9th Emmy nomination for that performance. And I just want you to know how angry and disappointed I was when you didn't win. You should have won that Emmy.
Do you know, that's the only time I've said I should have won. I've been very fortunate to have won Emmys, but that one, I should have said, I was surprised. I was getting used to losing to Tyne Daly, and happy. But they gave me a couple for Cagney and Lacey. But that show, I thought it was beautifully written, of course, but it was such a grim, funny, sick show, which I totally embraced, that I'd never seen a character like that before on television. And I must say, I was surprised at the Emmys.
I was angry. And then for 7 years, you played Madeline Weston on Burn Notice, who was the total antithesis of Debbie Novotny as a mother. Did it take some adjusting to play the mother from hell after playing a mother that was so beloved?
No, not at all. That's the other side of me, Harvey. I do have a sense of humor, and I loved playing that character. She was a chain smoker. She wasn't an alcoholic, but I did sort of slip in a couple of drinks for her. But she was a chain smoker and enjoyed pills. And just insinuated herself into her son's life. There's never been a spy that had a mother before. James Bond never had a mom. Well, Judi Dench was M, but this was different. And it was such a wonderful show, first of all. And then to play his mom, and eventually they started writing me into the cases. And as a novice doing that kind of work, it was fun. It was funny. At any rate, I was very, very blessed to be included in that show. That was the longest running show I've ever done. That we were invited to stay an 8th year, and Jeffrey Donovan, who was the lead, was burned out. They had sort of spoiled the golden goose, so we didn't do the 8th year, but it had that kind of popularity.
Oh, it was huge. Everyone loved it. As I mentioned in my introduction, your book is incredibly candid and frankly, it's brutally honest. Was writing the book therapeutic for you, Sharon?
By the time it was finished, it was. When I came up with what it would be about, I came up with the title. Apparently there were complaints. It's something I said to someone when they found out I'd been in Hazleton, which is the Harvard of the rehabs. And it was a big scandal at the time when I was put into Hazleton. And someone said, "Oh, you were in Hazleton." It wasn't chic in those days, And I said, "Yeah, I was." And she said, "Why were you in Hazleton?" And I said, "Apparently there were complaints." I'm trying to make light of it, So I kept that as the theme for the book. And it wasn't hard to remember all the complaints from my childhood. Not that I don't mean I hold on to bad things, but every time you do something wrong and you're criticized for it, you hold on to it. I was a sensitive kid. So everything that I was ever criticized for is in that book. And then as I got on in years after I grew up and I left my grandmother, I still got in trouble. It's part of my nature. So was it hard to write? I'll tell you something. It wasn't hard to write because it takes time, and I knew the stories. It was getting it in form that was difficult. What was emotional for me was reading it and I did an audio of it, which has won 3 awards. And with it all in place, and now I'm reading it like for the first time, I started crying during one place. They're my words. They're not new to me, but it touched me. It was something about my grandmother. And my voice broke, and Simon & Schuster's hooked in, my director's hooked in, everybody's hooked in. And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, guys, let's stop that. We'll go back, redo that." And my director said, "Are you kidding? That's gold. Keep it in." So, but
it's gold because it's authenticity, it's sincerity. I have read many Hollywood memoirs, but there's never been a book that's so filled with pain. There's just so much resilience you had to have to overcome it. I mean, if you could go back and talk to the young Sharon who was struggling with depression and with her weight and wanted to be an actress but didn't know how to make it happen and was obsessed with Rosalind Russell's portrayal of Auntie Mame, what would you say to her?
You're going to be all right. You're going to make it. You'll see. Just listen to what I'm saying. You're going to be all right.
Well, you were more than all right. I mean, I want to mention some of the highlights you wrote about. Just sit back and listen to this for a minute. As a kid, you attended a screening of the 10 Commandments at the home of Cecil B. DeMille before the movie was released to the theaters. As a young contract player, you went on a date with an unknown director named Steven Spielberg, and you attended the very first AFI dinner honoring John Ford. You had a beautiful, long friendship with Andy Griffith. You survived co-starring opposite the greatest egomaniac in Hollywood, Wayne Rogers, and you managed to stage the most convincing catfight with Lynn Redgrave at your wrap party. When you appeared at the Royal Command performance in London, Paul McCartney asked you for your autograph. And at another royal event, you met Prince Charles and Princess Diana at their very last public appearance the night before their separation was announced. At your surprise 50th birthday party, you were entertained by Bobby Short, and Johnny Mathis and Barry Manilow each sang happy birthday to you on film. In April of 1995, you and Tyne Daly appeared with Whoopi Goldberg, Lee Grant, Valerie Harper, Bella Abzug, Betty Friedan, and Gloria Steinem at a rally for women's equality at the National Mall in Washington. And I've barely touched the surface. Sharon, do you sometimes have to pinch yourself to believe the life that you've had?
I don't pinch myself, but I'll tell you, Harvey, I come from gratitude. I come from gratitude every day that I've had this really extraordinary life, certainly a challenging life at times, but a really extraordinary, very, really amazing life. I mean, when you read that book, I really have had. I've been very, very blessed, and all the hits I took as a child formed me. I have no regrets. The only regrets I have in my life is if I've ever hurt anyone. But I've stumbled, I've fallen, I've made mistakes, but I get up, and I don't regret anything, very little. And I've been blessed. I'm so grateful, Harvey, the people who've seen me through. RJ, do you know that I was about to be fired from Universal, and Robert Wagner saved my ass by putting me in his show Switch?
Wow.
And the description of my character was a Natalie Wood lookalike. Well, check it out. I mean, I don't even know how I got called in, but I read for him, and he signed. He said he wanted me that day. And I said later, I said, "Did you know that I was going to be fired from Universal?" He said, "I did." I said, "Is that why you signed me?" He said, "No, I'm not running a charity." He said, "No, I signed you because you were right for the part." But
well, he was right. You were right for the part. I just hope that through all that you've been through, and really the emotional damage when a child feels rejected and unloved and so harshly treated, it's very hard to overcome. But do you get, I mean, deep down, do you get how beloved and admired and respected and gifted that you are? Do you get it?
well, sometimes. You mean by the viewing public?
By the industry, by your fans, by your colleagues?
Well, I used to. I used to really, yes, I could feel it. Not so much anymore, but I wanted to correct something. I wasn't mistreated. I wasn't abused as a child, although some people would call my grandmother's training me somewhat abusive.
Emotionally abusive.
Yes, she was strict, and very strict.
But unkind, like deliberately cruel.
About my weight, yes.
Well, that's abusive.
Yeah. Do you know, she said, funny, when I was in my 20s, before she died, she said, "I have 17 grandchildren, Sharon." She said, "You're my favorite." And she said, "That's why I'm so rough on you. Because I want the best for you. I know what you're capable of." So I knew it wasn't that she needed a punching bag. It just, the way she did it was often unkind. But I'm tough. And I'm still standing.
You're tough. And somehow you harnessed all of that feeling you had into your creativity and your own personality, and you shaped your heart. I want to tell our viewers that you can learn more about Sharon Gless and find out everything that's happening by going to her official website, sharongless.com. Well, Miss Sharon Gless, I have only one more question for you. I know you're
Okay.
probably too self-conscious, too self-critical to watch your own performances on screen, but do you ever take a moment, an hour, and watch some of your shows and really see what you convey to the world?
During COVID, now again, I don't watch anything I've ever done, but during COVID, my husband was screening just for himself, another show he produced for me called The Trials of Rosie O'Neill.
Yeah.
And I heard my voice and sort of backed into the room, and I thought, gee, I look good. So then once I decided I looked all right, then I sat down and I thought, that's a wonderful show. And it's still very politically current. And the clothes they made for me were all designed for me in the 40s style. And yes, then I got hooked on watching The Trials of Rosie O'Neill. But normally, no, I can't look.
Well, Sharon, I can't find enough words to tell you how much of a thrill it's been to meet you and have this opportunity to interview you. Thank you so much for taking the time to appear on our show.
Harvey, I was told how wonderful you were, and it was a dream come true. You are everything that people say, and all the way they rave about you is absolutely true. Thank you for having me.
Well, that means the world to me. Thank you so, so much. Our guest has been the incomparable Sharon Gless, whose best-selling, critically acclaimed book, Apparently There Were Complaints, is available wherever books are sold, and you can get it in paperback starting November 29th. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you to our producer, Steve Silver. Thank you to my dear friend, Robert Wagner, for facilitating this interview. I love you, RJ. Thank you all for watching.
I love you, RJ.
And Sharon loves you, RJ. Thank you all for watching. See you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out all the great interviews on the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new videos are posted.